Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be doing something just a little bit different for you all. So with the F1 movie now out in cinemas worldwide, I thought I would do a quick review of the movie, go through the plot, give you my honest opinions and just go through the basic details of the whole movie. So let's jump straight into it. So just before I start, I do want to quickly say, obviously there are going to be some spoilers pretty much of the whole movie, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, make sure to like this video and put it on your watch later and come back to it. If you do still want to continue, obviously then I'm assuming you've already watched the movie, unless you're just weird, I guess kind of like me, and just want spoilers. So yeah, let's jump straight into the plot there. So we start off at Daytona with our main protagonist, Sonny Hayes, which is played by Brad Pitt, where we're at the 24 Hour of Daytona. So he is obviously just being introduced at this point, obviously as a driver who just lives it out. He's a bit of a gambler, living in his camper van, travelling around America, just doing whatever racing comes his way basically. And straight away we're introduced to his character as sort of a guy that just takes all the risks and is a bit aggressive compared to other drivers, as you will see with a BMW driver who gets a bit annoyed with him, who has a massive go at him when they both pit during the race. So yeah, we understand that Brad Pitt's character, Sonny Hayes, is really aggressive and doesn't really follow by the rules, let's say. So as of this, he is a bit of a controversial character, but he is very quick behind the wheel, and they do end up winning the 24 Hour of Daytona. And just when the team offer him a drive and a place at the team permanently, he obviously says no and just carries on his way and decides to travel across America once again, where he runs into his ex-teammate from the 90s in Formula 1. And this is where we find out that he actually was involved in a massive crash back in Jerez in 1993, which they actually used as Martin Brundle's crash, but just covered over Brad Pitt's / Sonny Hayes' face into it and helmet design over it. That is basically the beginning of the movie, and it's at this point where he gets offered a drive at his ex-teammate's new F1 team, Apex GP. And that is when he decides to take up the offer and meets him over at Silverstone when they're doing some testing. And this is where we're also introduced to Joshua Pierce, who is the main driver of Apex GP, who is a bit more of a different kind of character. He's a bit more of a social media influencer sort of thing, where he wants to be big on the socials with his manager, and obviously his mum as well. And he's described as a young and arrogant kind of driver. So obviously Pierce and Hayes sort of clash a little bit, and they're kind of like rivals to start with. Sort of like, you know, the Hollywood-y type kind of film where, you know, they start off with rivals and then sort of like build a team and, you know, become friends sort of thing and work as a team at the end. So yeah, at the beginning, obviously, we start at the British Grand Prix, which is round 9. This movie is based off the final 9 rounds of the 2023 season, so from Silverstone up to Abu Dhabi. We had an interesting moment with Brad Pitt's character, Sonny Hayes, where he does this thing on the formation lap where he pretends to stall and doesn't pull away, whilst everyone else pulls away and obviously does their formation lap as normal drivers do. And then he goes just as they're coming around the final corner sort of thing. So they say he starts on amazingly warm tyres and manages to gain so many positions on the first lap. As I said before, they start off at sort of the bottom where the two drivers clash. So Pierce and Hayes do end up having a crash together in Silverstone. Obviously, they're both quite annoyed at each other and blaming each other. And it's at this point where Pierce is still kind of happy though, because he's trying to get the social media influence going, whereas Hayes is sort of like, mate, you know, there's nothing to smile about, it's a race and we both crash, so you shouldn't be smiling, it's just all the noise. That's what they kept saying. It's at this point where Brad Pitt's character, Sonny Hayes, sort of starts saying about upgrades and how the car needs to be made for combat. As you guys heard from the trailer, that is still in the main movie as well. And they start saying about making the car more easier to drive in the turbulent air, as like all the other F1 teams aren't already trying that. But yeah, it's at this point where they have one more race before they could bring this massive upgrade. So what ends up happening at Hungary is he wants to go for Plan C, which no one really understands why he wants to go for Plan C, because it is just a stupid strategy, and obviously going on softs after destroying your front wing is just a terrible idea because softs will be destroyed up in the space of a lap or two. And obviously he comes into the pits after destroying his front wing and wants softs, but they're trying to put him on hards, and it feels like they're stopped there for about a minute or two, just arguing on the team radio saying Hayes wants softs, the team want to give him hards, but eventually they give him softs. So he goes back out and ends up taking off another front wing and damaging into someone else. Brings out another safety car, which after a while you start realising that Hayes keeps bitting in for more softs and changes front wing and hitting more people. And what he's doing is trying to help Pierce overtake and jump people in the pits. So when the safety car comes out, everyone pits and Pierce stays out and goes ahead of them. And eventually they manage to get Pierce to finish in P10, so they get a single point. I know, just sat here thinking about it makes me laugh. But yeah, so Sonny Hayes at this point in real life would have about 24 penalty points and 2 race bans or something. But you know what? It's a movie. You got to love it, and they carry on. After the race, Pierce is really happy that the team have finally scored their first point in 3 years. But Hayes is still only like, well, it's 1 point, mate. We got 1 point. That's not a big achievement. So he's still a bit annoyed. And now we get to the point where the upgrade starts coming in. So now with the upgrade, you can see the pace is so much better. And they are fighting up at the top, usually easily in top 10 at this point. And it's actually at the Italian Grand Prix where we have something a little bit interesting happens. So we have Pierce trying to go for the win against Verstappen as it starts raining. So Verstappen decides to stay out and Pierce decides to stay out, and everyone else pretty much pits, including Hayes, who is a lap down at this point. And what Hayes does is he pits for inters, comes out and then blocks up Verstappen, who's leading the race, and helps Pierce catch up to the back of Verstappen. And obviously straight away that is illegal and, well, unrealistic as well, because one, if you get a blue flag, you have to let the driver behind through. You can't block them up, especially if it's a leader. Two, if you're in inters and it's a full wet track like it was in the movie, I'm sorry, but no matter whether you're Verstappen with a Red Bull, you ain't catching up to intermediate tired drivers, unfortunately. But whatever, we continue. So yeah, Verstappen's on the slicks in pretty much full wet conditions. So is Pierce in second, catching up to him. Hayes is on inters, blocking up Verstappen. Eventually blocks him up enough for Pierce to catch him right up to the back of Verstappen. And he lets them both through at this point, and then he tells Joshua Pierce to hold off until turn 1. Pierce, being young and arrogant, as they describe him, he tries to send it around the outside of Verstappen into Parabolica, obviously in full wet conditions, ends up sliding off, hits a sausage curb and goes flying off over into the barrier and bursts into a ball of flames. So it's at this point where I would just start laughing and say that's really unrealistic. But obviously we did have a similar situation like that in F3 with Pironi a few years ago in F3, where he flipped over on the sausage curb into the barrier around that same corner. So it's kind of realistic, but it's a bit far-fetched that he goes over the barrier and then smashes into the ground and then bursts into flames. He is okay, but he is admitted to hospital, where Joshua Pierce's mum obviously blames Hayes. So at this point, it is where we get a little bit of a training montage where we get to see Sonny Hayes sort of start to build the team up and going from just outside of the points, getting just in the points and then getting near to top 5, getting really close to that podium. And obviously you also get a few shots of Joshua Pierce trying to train up and get back ready to get in the car. We have the likes of Zandvoort, we have Suzuka, and then we have like Mexico in that little training montage. And then suddenly we have Belgium. So for some reason, Belgium in this movie is like the 3rd to last round or something. So yeah, again, a little bit unrealistic, but still, they rolled with it and we roll with it too. So Belgium is where Joshua Pierce gets back in the race seat and his first race back after his big crash in Italy. Straight away, obviously, Joshua Pierce has a point to prove because Hayes has been going up, whereas Pierce has sort of been gone down after Italy and he sort of stayed there trying to get back fit into the car. So yeah, there is a bit of tension in the garage, and unfortunately there is a bit of a crash where Hayes is actually retired from the race, and Pierce does manage to get points. I think it was 9th or 8th or something. So he does manage to finish in the points. Hayes is a little bit annoyed with Pierce because obviously he had done all the hard work with getting the upgrades and getting the results whilst Pierce was off. So he does get a little bit annoyed with Pierce. But nevertheless, they do manage to come together once again, try and work as a team. The next race is Las Vegas. And this is where it gets a little bit odd as well, because so they get informed by the FIA that their upgrade to the floor to make it easier to follow cars during the dirty air that they brung just after Hungary was actually a bit suspicious and wasn't registered or something. I don't really get what happened there, because it was a bit of a mess, that part. I didn't really understand that. It's sort of like they said it wasn't legal, but it wasn't illegal, if you understand. I don't really get that. But they said they had to investigate it, basically. They got forced to remove that floor and go back to the old floor that they were using in Silverstone and Hungary. So obviously that was meant to make the car really slow, even though in Vegas they were still qualified up the top. Which, by the way, I also want to say that there is no practice or qualifying sessions during this movie. It's just the races. But you see on the start of the race where they are starting, and they're both within the top 10. Probably one of them was in the top 5 as well, which I thought was a bit weird. But it was at this point where they had a really good start, both of them. And Hayes, I think, is up to like P3 and fighting Perez for second. And it's at this point where he tries to go around the outside of Perez around the final corner, smashes straight off into the barrier and goes flipping around into the barrier. There was a deleted scene actually where they actually filmed Brad Pitt's character Sonny collapsing in that crash, where he basically gets out of the car, the medical car's coming to get him, and he collapses. But that wasn't actually added into the film. I was expecting that because I remember watching that on Twitter, I think it was, when they filmed it. But yeah, that wasn't in the movie, so they cut that part out. So that might be an extended cut if they decide to ever release that. But nevertheless, we now skip to where Sonny is in hospital, and we actually find out that his crash from Jerez in 1993 in Formula 1, which ended his career back then, actually resulted in massive spinal damage, where he had to have massive clamps in his spine, which should have made him uneligible to race. And obviously his ex-teammate from 1993, obviously who owns the Apex GP team, basically said, no, you're not racing anymore. You're done. I wouldn't have let you race, which is a bit weird anyway, because I would have thought that he would have had to have some sort of medical, and I don't think he would have been able to race by the FIA with an injury like that anyway, but I don't know. I don't know personally the rules. So, and also it's a movie. We're looking too far into this, but yeah, cannot race anymore, so that's it. Sonny Hayes is out of Apex GP. So he goes on to continue his life, and it's at this point we find out that one of the board members of Apex GP, who we actually meet at the beginning of the movie at Silverstone, he actually leaked the floor to the FIA and tried to prove that it was illegal. And if you're wondering why they did that, it's because the board actually wanted Apex GP to fail so they could try and restructure the team and sell the team, which is why the board kind of wanted to bring Sonny Hayes on, because Sonny Hayes is meant to be this old, retired, gambling addict sort of driver who doesn't really take it seriously. So they were hoping he would make the team fail, but obviously it actually went the other way and he actually improved the team. And it's at this point where he offers Sonny Hayes a offer to join the team as more of a like technical / team principal role. And it's at this point where Sonny Hayes decides to just turn up to Abu Dhabi and basically say, I'm racing. Like, I don't care, I'm racing. Obviously the team principal of Apex GP was sort of like, no, you're not. I told you you can't. But he was like, I am. I've got a lawyer saying I've got a contract for these 9 rounds. So he ends up racing. And I'm pretty sure it's at this round as well, if I can remember correctly, that the team reserve driver actually did qualifying, but then he didn't start the race and Sonny Hayes took back over, which straight away, as we all know, stuff like that has happened in the past, where we have had drivers who have qualified but haven't been able to take part in the race because of an injury or something. But obviously, once you've qualified, that's it. You can't put a reserve driver or a second driver or anything like that in. So yeah, that was something a little bit more unrealistic. Obviously, we saw that with the likes of Lance Stroll when he's had a couple crashes in the past, but obviously their team reserve driver like Felipe Drugovich wasn't able to take over. So yeah, just another little bit of Hollywood trying to make it a little bit more entertaining, but we roll with it once again. It's also at this point that the FIA conclude that the upgrades that they did to the floor and all the upgrades they did to make the car good is actually legal. So they run with the upgraded car again. And it's at this point where we get the massive showdown, obviously at Abu Dhabi. And you can tell at this point, this is where it's sort of Hollywood dramatized. And also it's funny because Lewis Hamilton is one of the producers, we all know that, and you can kind of tell that he's produced it, and it's also kind of funny as well. There's a few digs from obviously the controversial of 2021. So yeah, there is the part where Sonny Hayes and Joshua Pearce are racing. Sonny Hayes ends up having a bit of contact, I think it was with George Russell, and gets spun around, which is a very weird contact as well, by the way. There's a red flag, so all the cars manage to get back to the pits, including Sonny Hayes, where the team have, I think it's like 30 minutes or so, or whatever time is in between the red flag, to fix the rear wing. They managed to do it and managed to pull it off, and this is the part where, you know, the Rocky Balboa sort of motivational stuff comes out, where Brad Pitt's character, Sonny Hayes, is sort of trying to motivate Joshua Pearce to be like, you know, 3 laps is a lifetime, mate, you know, go win this and stuff like that. And we get a little bit of a stare down between Pearce and Hamilton, which is quite funny to say the least. Obviously, this is one of the parts where you know it's produced by Hamilton. Hamilton had to be, you know, the main antagonist at the end, you know. So at this point, the race has restarted, and Hamilton and Pearce are having a massive battle and going wheel to wheel with each other, when suddenly they make contact in towards turn 1 and fly off into the barrier. And Hayes, who is running P3, actually gets gifted P1. And there's a situation where he is basically on the final lap and it basically all goes quiet. Like he says a bit earlier on in the movie, it all goes quiet and he's just in the zone and going through the circuit. And that's sort of how it goes. It's sort of all the volume gets removed and it's just him driving. And then he ends up winning the race and it's a massive celebration. And then eventually, just like he does at the beginning when he wins the 24-hour Daytona, he ends up going back off into his caravan and leaves the race. So that is the plot of the F1 movie. Now let's get on to my honest opinion of the movie. It's quite a long movie. I think it was about 2 hours and 10 minutes or something. So obviously, it's a tricky one. Obviously, as a diehard sort of F1 / racing fan, obviously a team coming in to their 3rd year of F1 and then expecting to win a race is quite extreme, to say the least. Obviously, you have teams that are there for years trying to win races, and they sort of move up during the years, whereas Apex was sort of like did nothing, no points at the back all the time for the first 2 years. First 2.5 years, I should say. And then halfway through the 3rd year, they're suddenly like getting major points and then suddenly getting a win. So yeah, it's not realistic. It's not massively realistic. The racing in it is good. The good camera shots, and they did a really good job with the racing scenes. I think there's a few things where it's a bit cringy. So one thing that kept getting me, which makes me laugh even now, is Brad Pitt's character Sonny Hayes keeps saying Plan C is for combat, and there's a scene as well where the whole of Apex GP are there like combat, all chanting in a row. So yeah, it's a good movie. It's a good movie. The thing is, I'm a massive sucker for these kind of like motivational sports Hollywood films. You know, you could kind of say the same with Rocky. Before everyone comes at me and says, well, don't compare Rocky to the F1 movie if you hated the F1 movie. Obviously Rocky, like the 4th one especially, that's unrealistic. You have a guy who's like 6'5", massive, obviously all steroid up, going against Rocky Balboa, who is obviously definitely not going to be the same weight class for a start. And obviously as well, steroids and drugs in the boxing, it ain't realistic. So yeah, you know, you can say that about something. You can say it's unrealistic, but sometimes these Hollywood movies and Hollywood sports movies are good fun and they're entertaining at the end of the day. I'm a bit of a sucker, like I said, for these sort of movies, and I had fun watching it. It was a good movie. Honestly, I would rate it probably an 8 out of 10. yeah, I'm going to say that high. I'm not going to say 10 out of 10 because I still would have liked the realism in it a little bit more. That's the thing, most people watching this video right now probably watch F1 in real life. And you know, F1 sometimes can be a snooze fest. Sometimes you'll sit there for 2 hours and nothing will happen. You'll have like Verstappen or Piastri or Norris or something just leading the whole race and they'll win by a country mile. So, you know, making it Hollywood, a little bit Hollywoody was quite good. And I definitely think it'll be good for the sport with bringing new fans into it. Just like Drive to Survive did. I know we got a lot of people saying like, oh, Drive to Survive fans and stuff like that. But it's always good for the sport to get new fans, whether they're new, whether they're old. You know, it's always good to see the sport thriving more and getting more people talking about it. It just brings more opportunities within the sport, personally. So yeah, that is my honest opinion of the F1 movie and breaking down what the F1 movie is about. Like I said, really enjoyed the movie. If you haven't watched it and for some reason you decide to still stay and watch this whole video, then I definitely do recommend going and watch it. You know, it is a fun movie. I think it could be interpreted for new fans, but also experienced fans because the racing in it is still good. So yeah, I'm going to leave this video here. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure to like and subscribe. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Goodbye for now.